Hello, guys. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another episode of Scientology Stories. I'm your host, Marc Headley, and I will be joined tonight by my special co-host, Claire Headley, and our special guest, Mike Brown.
Hi.
Hey, Mike.
Here I am.
Here you are. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate
always
it.
a good time.
For those of you who don't know, all three of us, myself, Claire, and Mike, all worked at the international headquarters of Scientology. I worked there from 1990 to 2005. And Claire, what were the years you were there?
1991 until 2005.
And then what years were you there, Mike?
So I got to the Int Ranch and probably 89, and then from there transitioned over to Gold, and then ended up blowing in 2003. Or
Okay,
escaping.
good. So pretty much all of us were there for a decade to 15 years in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
and I was in Golden Era Productions. Claire was in Golden Era Productions, which is the media distribution unit for Scientology internationally. And then Claire eventually was promoted to the Religious Technology Center. And the Religious Technology Center is the organization that David Miscavige controls. And it's the highest organization that exists at the Int base. Scientology-wise, it is the most senior organization. And then Mike was in Golden Era Productions once he went from the ranch to the base. And then weren't you? What was your kind of your history? Because weren't you almost going to be in RTC for a little? You were like an RTC trainee or something.
I was an RTC trainee for basically between 1997-98 timeframe for about a year, and I was being groomed to both be kind of an enforcer working directly under Marty Rathbun, and he was training me to be like a little super nice ethics officer, like they do. And then I was also being trained to be David Miscavige's driver for a while, and then that ended up not working out, and I ended up going down to Golden Era Productions and making e-meters and stuff with Mark.
So if you don't make it into RTC when you're an RTC trainee, in most cases, you will then be put into Golden Era Productions, which is the lowest organization. I mentioned RTC was at the top, Golden Era was at the bottom. And but because Mike was considered to be in RTC, that meant he could probably be the highest you could be in Golden Era Productions eventually.
Yeah, at one point I was, for sure.
Yeah,
because I was working directly under the commanding officer.
Yeah, and is that when this story that is going to tell takes place, during that sort of time period?
Yeah, so I was under the commanding officer as his pretty much because I know there's some people in here that aren't all up on the vernacular, but his organizing officer, his assistant. And then during this time, I was then moved to a position called the Battle Plan IC. And that was still under the commanding officer, but it was Dave's little arm where he would reach down into Golden Era Productions and issue orders. And I would be the guy to run around and make sure that those orders were happening.
Yeah.
And so I was in Golden Era Production running around executing Dave's orders. So I was the Battle Plan in charge for that.
But that battle plan,
props there, Mike. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Good, very quick on the reacher over there.
I mean, he gets across the country too.
Yeah. He's
here. I'll hand him to you. You ready? Here, I'm going to pass him.
I am.
You got him?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you got him now. Oh yeah. Here, give him back to me. Let me see if I can.
There you go. Okay. Here you go.
There we go. There he is. Okay, good. Anyway,
I only missed the carry between. I'm ill prepared.
That battle plan that you were in charge of getting done, to be clear, was David Miscavige's list for Golden Era Productions of all the things he wanted done. And that list at any time could be hundreds and hundreds of items long.
Oh, absolutely. And it was, honestly, it's the worst job I have ever done, because you are in charge of running around and trying to find out why people aren't doing things. And a lot of what I directly saw was the orders were so contradictory, or like things would go undone for so long. And then it was somehow my job to go and find out why and trying to report back. And then these things, I would see all them laid out in front of me, and they were so confusing on if you gave just one person all of the things that that one executive was supposed to do in this organization, of which Dave is micromanaging. It was very, very hard to even understand, let alone how to expect to get it accomplished. It was horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Good.
So-
Good sum up there, Mike. Well done.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just as a tiny little bit more of a backdrop before we tell all this, if you haven't seen the video that we did a few days ago about a breakout, we'll put a link to it in the description, but it's an int-based escape video. And Claire and I did that video, and we laid out the entire security and perimeter system that keeps the Sea Org members into the base. If you haven't seen that video, I really recommend watching that video, because we're not going to get into that on this video. We're just going to talk about how Mike circumvented those measures. And but we're going to try this one a little bit differently in the way we lay it out. Mike is in the military, or has been in the military since he left the Sea Organization. He's not representing the military in this, but the way he laid this out and how they executed this whole thing was a precise military operation.
You obviously ended up where you were supposed to be, Mike.
Yes, this
Yeah.
took place before he was in the military.
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. So yeah, this is going to be a fun story. But yeah, and to be clear, this is us explaining something about an event that actually happened, but we're in no way condoning any sort of illegal activity or breaking the law. But this is going to be interesting simply from the perspective of how tightly they control their organizations and
Yeah.
how that then affects the staff that are in there.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just as a backdrop for this, in the 90s, since starting in 1993, when the Scientology blackmailed the IRS into giving them tax exemption, during that time period, David Miscavige was getting increasingly more aggressive with the Sea Org members at the international headquarters. And it was getting to the point where about every week somebody would escape. Like, it was a regular occurrence where they have a thing when you escape without authorization. It's called a blow. And when there is a blow drill, there's several hundred people that go into action to call the airlines and call the hotels and go to the hospitals and do all these things to recover that person. And that was happening on a regular basis at the base, that somebody would escape and then everybody would go to the airport, go to the Ontario airport, go to LAX, try to find out where this person was. So that leads us to the story tonight. So why don't you explain to us how this came about, and then we'll start showing the slides.
Absolutely. So when I was in this position, which was in the executive division of Golden Era Productions, I would interface very much with RTC and the RTC executives. One of the executives was in a position called the internal executive, which later on the timeline, Claire moved into that position in RTC, but it's a very senior position in RTC, in charge of internal affairs of RTC, what's going on with the staff, but also of the actual security of the base where RTC people are working is one of the concerns of this person. It was a lady by the name of Carmen. And Carmen wanted to test the security system at Golden Era Productions and the international base. And she and I were also, we had some history together. She knew me when I was younger, and we would talk. And she asked me to check the property in terms of see if there's a way where it could be infiltrated, and then how the security system could be foiled was really what she wanted to do, to see if we could do it. And her hopes would be that we could not. Unfortunately, she was wrong. So we came up with a plan, myself and two other people, in order to do something that was authorized by her directly, but no one knew about it except for the three or four of us that were kind of under her direction to do this. So when we did this, it was under the direction of the internal executive of the Religious Technology Center to see if we could infiltrate the base and defeat the security system. And that is what we're going to kind of go over in detail, how we did that.
Yeah. So again, we We want to make sure you guys know that, because we're going to talk about breaking and entering. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things that occurred in this video. It was a test. It was a drill that was being put on by the Religious Technology Center. And this is not the only time they did this. They did this with other people hired outside private investigators. They did the same thing. And I'm probably going to have Jackson on and we'll tell that story, which is equally as crazy as this one. But we do not condone this. We don't want anybody to do anything that we're talking about in this video. We're just going to say how this was done in the 1990s. These activities were carried out under the direction of the Scientology Religious Technology Center organization, ordered this to be done to test the Golden Era Productions security and the base security system.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too that they learned from this and refined their systems. So if you wonder today, in today's age, why is it so hard for people to leave? This is part of what led up to that in terms of the history and the streamlining and the finding the holes and closing those holes.
Yeah. Okay.
100%.
Yeah. Kids, do not try this at home.
No.
Okay, here we go. We're going to get into it, guys. This is going to be a wild ride. Okay, so this all takes
Dave, you ready?
place.
Here we
Yes,
go.
Davey, get ready, Davey. Oh, let me grab him from you real quick. And there we go.
Here we go.
Okay. Okay, so this all took place in the United States, and the international headquarters of California is over on the West Coast in California. And I will show you. We'll just zoom right to that here. And there it is. That is the Scientology International Base. And we covered this in the last video on exactly how the property's laid out and some of that stuff. But that's where it is. And I'm going to let Mike tell the story, and I'm going to show the pictures as he tells the story.
Okay, so just kind of as an overview, there was the first problem, which was actually the hardest one to solve, was we were on the base. We had to figure out how to actually get off the base. We were all on the property, and the hardest part of this entire thing was getting off the property without someone discovering us. What we ended up doing was one of the people it was the communicator or executive assistant for the commanding officer. She had to put us in the kind of the laying down in the back of a car, not dissimilar to how Valerie Haney ended up escaping in somebody's trunk of their car and went through a gate that was one of the satellite gates, not by the main gate, while the three of us were laying down in the back of this vehicle in order to go and stage off the property to do this. We could not figure out a way to get off the property without setting off the security system. So we had to have someone smuggle us out in order to get out. I think that's important. It was harder to get out than it was to get in. That's the first thing I want to talk about. So our staging area was just basically down to the east over here. It's a small property that they had. What was it? It was the hillside.
Yeah, it was called Hillside, but we all called it Hill Slide because whenever there was rains, it would just be a mud wash right by these. It was a really, really dilapidated, kind of like just studio apartments that had one room and mostly couples or security or executives that needed to be brought into the base quickly. If David Miscavige needed him for something, they couldn't be too far from the property.
Yep.
Or electricians or people that had to have immediate access, like security and things of that nature. So we staged here and we had parked one of the few vehicles that people had, personal vehicles. We had parked it at this location the day prior, and then we had to get to here and then stage. So we had a getaway driver, a gentleman by the name of Jamie Butterworth, and it was myself and a guy named Chris Leak. And we were the team. Myself and Chris were the actual mission team, and then Jamie Butterworth was our driver in order to drop us off and eventually pick us up. So we stayed.
And sorry, not to interject completely, but we should mention we just talked about Jamie Butterworth a week or so ago because he's now currently doing committees of evidence on civilian Scientologists. Fun fact.
As a public, he's not in the Sea Org anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is somebody that's been indoctrinated. He was a child with me in the Cadet Org at PAC He has been in Scientology and the Sea organization his entire life. He does not know life outside of Scientology. So
Right.
a highly indoctrinated individual would be Jamie, as we all were at the time. So we stage from here, and from here, what we're going to do is we're going to proceed basically up the screen and to the left, which is basically heading westbound, and we're going to go all the way up to the property. You can see this green area where there's the red line. That's the Golden Era Golf Course, and then we're going up to the drop-off point. So this drop-off point is actually a point that's been talked about considerably. This is a flood channel, and at the bottom of it is a big retention basin. It's like just a big pit for water to collect at that was established after that big flood that's been talked about many, many times that just absolutely destroyed part of the property right before Tom Cruise was about to come.
Yeah.
So this particular location is an area that was kind of a blind spot for their security system, where you could quickly pull up to it and stop for just a moment. And we jumped out real fast, and then the car kind of kept going past the property and eventually went and staged to at another location that was close by. Well, we went into this retention basin and then up a channel, which is like a wire basket and rock channel called the Gabion channel. Gabions are just the type of baskets. And this takes us right up to the property that is right by what is now the RTC building, or building 50, which is the one that's kind of down in the bottom center. And then the Bonnie View Estate, which is the whole lush property up there. That is the mansion complex that they created for L. Ron Hubbard to return home someday. And we went up about halfway, and you can see there is a point of insertion. What this was, there was a temporary fence at the time because neither of these two buildings were finished in their construction. And they had just a fence that is, their perimeter fence had to be kind of moved a little bit. But there were some trees that were overhanging where you could access outside the fence without setting off the motion shakers and setting off the entire security drill. And we were able to go to that point. And one thing that's interesting is myself and this other guy, Chris, we are probably about 100 pounds apart. Me being, more towards 200 pounds.
Yes.
Nowadays, just a little bit more than that. And then Chris maybe being 100 pounds if he's lucky.
Soaking wet. Maybe.
Oh, with his boots on. Yeah, soaking wet. So what we did is there was a tree branch that was overhanging the fence, and I got up on Chris's shoulders, which, if you can imagine these like power lifters that are like lifting and their like eyes are turning red and their nose is bleeding, that's probably what Chris looked like putting me on his shoulders. I was able to reach up, grab a tree branch, and he was able to climb up me into the tree, and then we both got into the property through that tree. And that's how we were able to get in. So we kind of had like a little human ladder thing where we were able to kind of stabilize each other, get up into the property at that point. Once you get past the gate, the only security measures in place are kind of a roving guard with too big of a property to cover. And then if any staff see you, they would notice somebody out of uniform and then probably indicate that. We were wearing all black. We had face paint on. We made ourselves look extremely suspicious. And we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. So at this point, we had two primary things we were going to do. We were going to deliver fake subpoenas, which, as I'm reflecting back on this, there was such a concern at the time. This is back in the late 90s about Dave being subpoenaed still. And we're talking like over 20 years later. Dave being subpoenaed, that they wanted to make that the thing of like, hey, you're going to drop off fake subpoenas that say this is a fake subpoena, this is a drill, call the main booth, there's an intruder.
Yeah,
and
let's not forget though, at that time, the Lisa McPherson wrongful death at the Fort Harrison had that was in December 1995, I believe. Mm-hmm. So they were in the thick of the lawsuits,
a lot of legal battles,
criminal and civil lawsuits relating to that. So this was a very real concern for David Miscavige at the time, as it is now.
Yep. Absolutely. So we then proceeded to move down to a location called the Upper Villa. So there we took a path basically down. Right now it looks like this, nicely manicured lawn and it is. But back in the day, this was very much kind of no man's land and a kind of a site. So we proceeded down to the Upper Villa location. down through the weeds and stuff, which is right where David Miscavige's main office was at the time. He was not on the property. He was off the property, I believe, in either LA or Flag. I couldn't tell you where he was exactly, but he wasn't there. That's why we were able to do this drill, or else it would have been a bigger problem. And then there was also in the middle villas right there is the location of where the RTC legal offices are. And that's probably where Claire's office was back in the day as well.
Exactly.
So there are two drop boxes, one at the upper villa, which is any sort of submissions or letters incoming go to David Miscavige. They get dropped off at that location. There's like this inbox right outside, and there's one of his clerks there to receive it all. And there's also a similar inbox for receiving submissions at the middle villa for what was a unit called AVC that they would verify policies. So there was two drop-off boxes. We delivered a subpoena to each one of those. Nobody saw us. We dropped them off, and at which point we knew that we didn't have very long, because they usually check those things every couple minutes to see if there's anything new that came. So we knew we needed to get away from this location of the property as fast as absolutely possible, because one thing that we had noticed whenever there was an event that happened, security would hyper-focus on that one location, and then they would ignore other parts on the property, which is very much what Mark used to his advantage many years later on the video that they talked about a few days ago on how they were able to get someone out.
Yeah.
So we were banking on that exact thing happening. So we tried to get as far away from there as possible. We kind of proceeded past a lot of these other buildings that a lot of them are audiovisual specific buildings, a couple management, down to more of the western side of the property, which is kind of up there in the upper left corner. There's one thing that, and Marc and Claire can both attest to this, on that property, there are motorcycles everywhere because it's a large property and people are running all over the place. So people just park their bikes and they just leave the keys inside. So no matter what the bikes are, there's just keys inside everywhere. So we knew that there was a location of bikes over in this area all the time, which is over where a lot of the audio composers and stuff worked. So we went over there hoping we would find a motorcycle, and sure enough, we did. So we proceeded to get on a motorcycle. Chris was driving. I was riding on the back. We then proceeded to drive from the north side of the property through a tunnel that they have that connects the north and south sides of the property, right there through the where you see the road.
It goes under the highway. Yeah.
It goes under the highway, so the staff never have to go out. We kind of proceeded around some of these buildings, which the one right in the center is where the staff would eat, and then over to a building referred to as Building 36, or the manufacturing building. And I would say if there's the number of all-nighters I have pulled in that building is obscene. And I'm sure Mark knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Me too.
There's a lot of good sleeping locations in there.
Yeah.
One of which I'll talk about.
This is a great.
So at the back of Building 36, right here by a loading dock, is a mechanical room, and inside this mechanical room are a bunch of power panels. The power panel, and this is also an area that is usually fairly warm because it has some mechanical stuff going through there, and not many people go into it, but it's always just open. And I think that probably I've slept in that room on the floor, like, I don't know, 50 to 100, probably 50, 60, maybe 100 times, like a lot. But on the panels in there is one big ass panel that says security booth main power, do not turn off. So we proceeded to that room. We went inside there and we turned it off. It then has there is a fire door there, which is a fire rated door. We closed that, we locked it behind us, and I got back on the bike with Chris. At this point,
let me mention, no one has keys to anything. So if you, that's why you leave your keys in your bike or whatever, but all the rooms on the base that have locks on them, like if it's an electrical room or something like that, finding who has the key to that room could be a mission in itself, much less when you get there having to open, like security doesn't even have keys to that door in most cases, or the electricians would. So it's definitely locking the door was a very key, point.
Pretty
That was kind of a
genius.
huge
Pretty
jerk,
genius.
pretty jerk move on my part, and I'm pretty proud of it.
You know what? You
Um,
were testing the system and you did a damn good job.
Yeah.
I
So
took advantage of how much I was testing the system. You know, when you're like when you're give an inch and you take a mile, I feel like I took all of
Yes.
that mile. So this was more or less the entire path that we had taken to get down there. And so Mark's going to now turn off the. So at this point, let me kind of recap on what we've done. We've gotten into the base. We've dropped off these subpoenas. By the time we make it down to the south side of the property, when we had gone through that tunnel, we had at least seen one, if not two staff that saw us riding like two guys on face paint, all dressed up like weird. Oh, they waved at us. We were like, hey, waved back. And
as Sea Org members will do.
it's like, hey, I haven't slept in a while. I'm just going to wave at you. You look strange. So by the time we actually got down there, the alarm started going off because somebody, they'd probably found the subpoena up there and somebody called the booth. So at this time, they're scared for RTC to secure the area, secure the executive. So everyone starts rushing up to RTC and all the security, the rover is up there and they're just locked in on that one location. So now our mission is to, quite simply, how do we get out? So Chris came and picked me back up from the loading dock. We proceeded in the most direct way possible, straight through the center of the base, went through a small tunnel you can see right by that building in the very center, which is Massacre Canyon Inn. Probably drove by 2 or 3 people, went straight through the tunnel with other people running up there towards us. At this point, the booth is dark, but the security system is already on, but they have no eyes. They have no ears. All they have is their radios, but they have no cameras. The cameras don't work. They can't control any of the gates. It is a complete and total mess. So we proceed back to this little parking lot, and this parking lot is where a lot of executives would park their cars, which is very close actually to where the hole currently was, and you can see that right in that location. And we waited by the gate. So once we were waiting there, we didn't have a separate radio. We were using walkie-talkies, but we didn't have a separate radio aside from the security frequency radio. So we were trying to use the security frequency radio to call our getaway driver. So we called him, we had a little code word, and he just kind of scratched back on the microphone to let us know that he was on his way. And we had timed it. It takes less than probably 4 minutes to drive from where he was, which is a short distance away down in a location called Sublet Road, which is actually where Mr. and Mrs. Headley used to live. He was parked right there in that road.
Mr. and Mr.
Mr. and Mr. Oh my
Mr. and
gosh.
Mr. Headley. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of weird. For any of those that don't know, in the Sea organization, regardless of male or female, you will refer to everybody by the pronoun of Mr. So that it was very confusing. So that's just a Hubbard thing.
Yes.
So he drives from this location down by Sublet, and it's going to take him about 3 minutes to get to us. So we're kind of timing like, okay, where are you? You know, kind of standing by. And from that exfil car staging location, he drives right down past Highway 79. This is, past all the floodlights are on because they point both in and out. Like the whole road is lit up like a sporting event.
Right.
At this point, we know based off of the time he was going to drive at an exact speed to arrive at an exact time, so that we're not like sitting out on the highway, like twiddling our thumbs, like waving as people as they go by, wait to see if we could get a ride.
In your black outfits with black face paint, which
exactly.
already hasn't apparently caused any concern to the brain dead Sea Org members on this property.
Yeah.
No,
now, didn't you guys also, because when the booth can't control the gates, you can't even push the gates open. They're mechanical gates. You can't open them. Mm-hmm. But didn't you guys do some weird thing, like you climbed up the pillars or something? I remember hearing about this because it was a major flaw in the security system that was sort of, you guys revealed it to everybody.
Yeah. It was a few things, and they ended up locking that mechanical room door so people couldn't get in there to turn the booth off too. So they fixed some stuff. But what we did is we proceeded from right there in the parking lot, and we went out right there to the gates. And right in the center is a big pillar. Well, they have that that razor wire stuff, the ultra
Ultra
barrier,
barrier. Yeah.
it's big spikes that stick both in and out. So it makes it very hard for anyone to either escape or get in. This was a point where the ultra barrier was not ridiculously thick. And the reason why was because people would come in and out of these gates and they would have professionals like arriving here to record music. And there's all this ultra barrier like sticking up like, like it's like a prison or something. It would have looked really strange. So they kind of toned it down, and we took advantage of that. And we climbed up the floor and jumped down the road.
Says Hotel California better than 3 layers of razor wire, right?
Exactly.
Ultra barrier. Oh my gosh.
So right as we jump down, Jamie's pulling up in the car, and we jump in right here and proceed to just get down the road as fast as we absolutely can. This is where he picked us up. We just dove in. I dove in the front seat. Chris dove in the back seat, and we proceeded down here all the way to an interchange, which will either take you to Beaumont, out to San Bernardino, or all the way into Hemet and San Jacinto, or Hemet, the actual city of it. So if you make it to this location, you're gone.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Once security knows, once you get this far, you're in the wind, because who knows which way you went. And they don't have, if you look over on this in the picture here, you see where there's that square with the 2 rectangles. That's their property line ends right there. That's Massacre Canyon, and that's called Potrero Creek. And their property line, I'm pretty sure, goes up to Potrero Creek. So they don't have any facilities or any infrastructure that can see all the way over to here, besides what's on the castle. The castle has some super high power cameras on it, but I don't think it could see which way cars went by the time they get all the way over here.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's a fair amount of traffic on here at that point. And then then at night, it's going to be really hard. So once you get on one of these other roads, you're pretty much gone. We got to that point, we just pulled off on the road, and we waited about within the next 5 minutes. Here comes a security truck, like screaming up next to us. And it was like, what happened? So they did eventually get most of the security booth turned back on, but it took a while, and they had to kick that door in, like actually like bust through the lock, with a guy kicking it until it finally went in, so they could turn it back
to get the booth power back on.
Yeah, they couldn't turn it back on.
Oh my goodness!
It was cut off at the main. It was out.
Oh my goodness.
That was and anyone who's been on that property for any length of time will remember a gentleman by the name of Martin Reed. Martin Reed is the most unpleasant individual that you would ever have a chance to talk to. Martin Reed is mean as shit, and he was in charge of the electrical systems, and he worked in the landlord's office.
Yeah,
and he's
like Martin Reed is if no offense to pit bulls, but if a pit bull or a Doberman Pinscher or something of that kind of who had been aggressively trained was transformed into a human, that's Martin Reed. Like been made evil.
I've never seen a compassionate anything out of him. Like just screaming like a tyrant of a person. Yeah. Anyway, he had designed, but he's brilliant too, but like psychotically so. Anyway, not to talk too much smack about Martin, but I don't have a lot of good memories about him.
Yeah, he was sort of a mad genius, heavy on the mad part.
Yeah, he was very angry. But he had designed a lot of those systems, and it's a very elaborate system, but they had a lot of high-tech stuff in that booth. And the way that they would actually manage and control turning on the perimeter lights, it was all very computerized and probably well ahead of its time. So the system he developed was unbelievably complex, but it's the kind of system that doesn't like being turned off the way we turned it off.
No,
not at all. And it took them like some components got fried. They had to fix stuff, and Martin was not impressed with me at all. And I was just like, RTC told me to.
And let's be clear. This was a monumental flap at the time. Like it was sort of, new. It's time for some security guards are not going to be security guards anymore. There's going to be a whole bunch of new security guards are going to get pulled from all over the organization. You're just like, tomorrow, this guy that works for you. Yeah, he's in security now, because it was. I mean, almost all of these stories that happened that we're going to tell you, the security guards at that property, the Keystone cops were levels and levels above these security guards. I mean, there was one time, there was one of these, when RTC hired somebody, and all of the security guards' radios were dead. while they were sleeping. They weren't even charged. Like, they were dead by the time they put them on charge. And even after hours, they had maybe 1 or 2% of charge. As soon as they'd turn them on, they'd die. I mean, they just had horrible equipment. They had, I mean, most of their budget got spent on that perimeter system. It wasn't getting spent on radios or equipment for them. It was on barbed wire and, you know, ground microphones and fence shakers and bulbs. I think their biggest expense in security were bulbs, because those stadium lights that they had surrounding the entire property, those things were not
Very
cheap,
expensive,
and they
No.
ran them all the time. They had
Yeah,
them
you
on.
you
They
could
would
see
test
those
them
from
every-
miles away. Especially
Unbelievable.
It was a lot.
because the property was at the base of a mountain. So anybody in Hemet or the surrounding towns, if that property was lit up, you could see it, no problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
there is a chapter, somebody just wrote this, and I just wanted to say, there is a chapter of my book where I explain all of the different drills: the security drill, the blow drill, the intruder drill, the flood drill, the fire drill. They had drills for all these things, and each drill, if depending on which drill it was, you might do a different function. And they had this thing called the WQSB, the Watch Quarter Station Bill. And every person had an assignment on it, whether they were port or starboard, their watch. It would alternate every week which port or starboard. If you were port or if you were starboard, you would have to do a different function. It was I mean, the amount of
And
time.
then condition one, everybody's on board doing it. Yeah.
Yes.
The amount of time that
something I'll
Scientology
mention-
spend messing around and drilling for something that might happen is kind of crazy.
Oh, for sure. And one thing that I think is worth mentioning, the both as a positive and as a negative, but in their case, a big negative. By this time, I think Jackson was already gone.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Jackson was a major driving force in creating some semblance of order and discipline and making that security detachment like very good at their jobs. And at this
Yeah.
point, I think it was a combination of Kevin Catano, who was married at the time to Kirsten 5.0 or whatever we're calling her now.
Yes.
And
She was
then,
married to the person who runs the spies.
Yeah, and then Danny Dunnigan, who is like Gomer Pyle at its finest. So the guy is an idiot. But that was part of the issue, and why I think RTC wanted to test it is they weren't impressed with what was going on with security. So they're like, let's mess it up. And that's what exactly happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember even at this point, it was because there was so much tension between Gold and RTC, and Dave was constantly, you guys are horrible. I'm going to get rid of this place and set something up in LA. He was always threatening to just disband and just declare every Sea Org member there a suppressive person and just close it down, just sell the property and get rid of it and start something in LA, which he didn't sell the property because it's worth a ton of dough, but he did just set up a whole new thing in LA. And he doesn't, from what we've been told, he does not travel to this property anymore. And one of the biggest things that was his concern was that people would escape when he was there, or that somebody would break in when he was there. So the fact that this was tested, we were just talking about this when we did the last escape video. We were like, oh, what about these times they paid people to break in, and they paid people to break people out? And it was sort of like, this has been a common theme for all these times. Because then you said, oh, one of those times we did it. I was like, oh, that's right. You and Chris broke in that one time. And so this was a thing that they were constantly doing, because David Miscavige was always telling everybody, if I get subpoenaed, it's over for you guys. If a subpoena gets to me, this whole place is done. So,
And that was the thing we were delivering were subpoenas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then just trying to get away. So anyway.
And by the way, I'm going to insert a mindful break to all the 1,700 people. Get on over to Mike Brown 101 and subscribe. Mike is like just a hair's breadth away from, what is it, Mike? 5,000 subscribers.
5,000, right?
5,000. It has been a crazy 2 months. Yeah.
Yes,
5,000.
crazy 2 months. So let's get Mike to 5,000 tonight, please, and
What's the
thank you.
channel name exactly? And we'll put it in the description as well. But it's Mike.
It's Mike Brown 101.
Perfect.
Like the Depeche Mode song, Mark.
Trust me, I know 101. I'm good on the 101
It's like
part.
Freeway. Or
That's
there's a lot of
easy.
other 101s other than Depeche
Yeah.
Mode. Let me just put it out there. So,
Do we want to answer some questions? We've got a few questions that got
absolutely,
started
yeah.
while we were doing this. Here we go. Oh, it's Jefferson Hawkins. Hey, Jeff.
hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey guys, greetings from Oregon. Yes, greetings to Jeff. Jeff Hawkins is another person that was at the international headquarters with us. And I think he was there all the way up until 2004 or maybe 2005. I think he might have left a few weeks or months after I did, very shortly around that time.
Right
Yeah, I
around the
think
same
he
time.
might have been involved in the similar, like when they were getting rid of people like my mother in March of 2004. I think Jeff might have been one of the ones that was found in that same abusive situation that Rosemary was.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
That's right.
it's
I
wild.
remember that.
Just
Liz
so much
Ferris
talent.
is
Anyway.
Yeah, Liz Ferris is in the chat here.
Hey,
Hello,
Liz.
Mark, Claire, and Mike. Hey,
Hello.
Liz. Jorge Avila. He was a security guard at the Int base as well.
During
He
this
says,
time.
you guys didn't mention Eagle. Eagle, that's right. We didn't mention Eagle, and we didn't mention in the last video either. We'll have to do that when Jackson is on because he'll know more.
And maybe
or
have Jorge on for that too.
Double whammy. But
Yep.
Eagle was a hole that was dug into the mountain above the property, above the Int base. And that was a security lookout. They had cameras up there. There was always a guard up there day or night. And he had binoculars and all kinds of stuff. And he could see from that vantage point, you can pretty much see the entirety of the property. And if something happens somewhere, Eagle can look and go and see what's going on. I'm not sure. I mean, to be honest, I think Jorge might have been on watch when this happened. So Jorge, you got some explaining to do. No, I don't know. Jorge was there when this happened, but Jorge was he was commonly the rover security guard, and he would drive their big Kawasaki 650 KLR, I think it was, or I want to say it was a KLR 650. They'll correct me if I'm wrong, but hey, Jorge. Good to see you. Amy Scobie's here. Hello, everyone. We're going to do a live. This video is going to feed into a live that Claire and Amy are doing with, am I on that too, babe?
Yes.
With Matt, and is Matt too?
Yes.
Okay, good. With Matt and Mark. Okay. Susan King, I love every one of your victories. Get them out. Thank you, Suzanne.
That's our goal.
That's
or
great.
Susan. Christy Lynn Wilson. What does COS think is so precious that it needs this level of protection? Is it just a continuation of LRH's paranoia, or are they preventing rescues? I think it's a little of everything, Christy. I mean, obviously they want to keep everybody in and they want to keep everybody else out. And I think they really were, the intrusion part is just about the subpoenas. No one is breaking into that property to steal anything from there because most of the stuff they have is old and it's not worth stealing. But yeah, they don't want people escaping. And David Miscavige, I mean, this is in 1990s. He was worried about getting subpoenas. Can you imagine how he has to travel now and the security he has to have? He's being served in multiple lawsuits. I can't imagine what they do in Los Angeles, Mike.
And all of the pictures of when the process servers are going and trying to deliver it, it's all pictures of security guards like, never heard of the guy. You know what I mean? Just tying all these things together, you can see how like it's got to be anyone in his orbit has just got to hate life. That's the only way I can see
not
it.
a good. Oh, here's Code
absolutely.
Monkey. Code Monkey. Thank you, Code Monkey. He says, I was told Jackson almost shot someone, gun drawn. Yeah, that from PIs doing penetration testing on Int base. Apparently only Marty knew about the test. Yeah, we'll tell that story.
Well, Jackson told that story with me on one of our Scientology stories episodes.
Yeah, is that the one where they got to the villas and they put the gun? Yeah, so they put a pew-pew and said, bang, and you're dead, to somebody in RTC, which was the same. If we can get in to do that, we can give you a subpoena, no problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, wild. Same name.
And something here. I'm going to just highlight one other thing. So Carmen, the woman who's the internal exec, and why she had us write the subpoena thing and this is a drill and call the main booth, was she wanted it very clear that for them to know that we were executing a drill on them and that it wasn't we were actual intruders.
Yeah.
Because there was a concern that I was like, sir, talking to this woman, I'm concerned that we might get shot. And she's like, we'll take care of it in this way. And then as soon as it actually happens and they get the call, I will call them and say, this is a drill RTC is running, so that they then know that, what level of force to apply to us if they caught us, which they did not. So
yeah. Wild.
But that you had to even worry about that just shows the insanity of this place.
Yeah, well, Midnight Show says, question, is this mainly to stop Sea Org members from blowing? It seems like the int base is a prison. Oh, I guarantee you it would be easier to break out of a minimum security prison than it would be to break out of the int base.
Yeah.
Is that you? Are you somebody?
Sorry.
There's ghosts in the chat machine.
That was me. So sorry.
Be Sweet LL says, I seriously thought Mark said Betrayal Creek and thought that's a legitimate name there. It's Petreo Creek with a P. Petreo. It's the Massacre Canyon Inn is that the Massacre Canyon is the canyon right there, and the inn is named after that canyon, the Massacre Canyon Inn. That's where we ate. Massacre Canyon feeds in to Petreo Creek. Mm-hmm. Thank you, B Sweet. Kestrel 42. This is so funny. Was this a big flap? Yes, it was.
This is a big ass flap.
So what was the fallout, Mike?
Well, so we did this on a Friday night, which if anyone knows, on a Friday night is kind of the end of the week. Everyone's like either their stats up or down. They can kind of let their hair down for a second. All the staff were in the process of going home. It was later in the evening. And the next day on Saturdays is when everyone's supposed to do renovations on the property. But also, what does every Saturday start with, Mark? A little bit of drilling, right?
Yeah, yes. Muster and drilling.
Muster and drilling.
Start with muster and drilling, and you're supposed to either do fire drill or intruder drill. So they were in the process of all night. People were up trying to figure out how to deal with this, and the entirety of the day was focused on hardening the property so that it couldn't be breached, cutting trees down, like putting up better security barrier, and then getting Martin Reed's booth fixed, and then like trying to set this up so it could never happen again. And it was people were up all night, and everyone's just there doing the job. I was getting some really, really like hateful stares. Like I was getting the stink eye from a few people.
Stink eye. I was just going to say that you must have been getting massive stink eye.
But do you remember what we used to do after this? So when we would do this drilling on Saturdays, the main purpose of Saturday is for renovations of the property. And no matter where you work, you're supposed to do renovations. Even Religious Technology Center would be building, somebody who knew how to do concrete was building a block wall or a stone veneer wall with me. And I'm mixing concrete for somebody in RTC, and we're just building the wall. And then when renovation's over, they go back to their job and you go back to your job. But when we would do the drilling on Saturday, it would usually be like a half hour. Like we're gonna do fire drills. Everybody go back to your building, put out a fire, and then wrap up your stuff and come back here. And it was like you got 10 minutes to do all of that and get back here. And then they would say, "Oh, this team did horrible and this team did great." Blah 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 blah. After Mike's little stunt that he did, we were drilling the whole morning. Like we wouldn't do any renovations. Yeah. We would just drill until lunch, and it was like, you got to be kidding me. But the new drill that it created was the intruder drill, and staff got to be the intruders, and they would do what Mike and Chris did, but during the day they would do it. And I remember this now because I remember Mike and Chris would always be the intruders after this. Great. So they
I remember. Do you remember Abby Aberon?
Yeah,
Abby Aberon.
This was like a month later. So we were doing something, and Abby got me like he was more athletic than me, and
he tackled him.
He tackled me, and he had me in an arm bar like he was going to break my arm, and I was just trying to still struggle, and he's like, "Bro, I will break your arm if you don't stop struggling." And this was the drill, and I was like, "This guy's gonna fuck me up."
Yeah. So it was actually I remember this now. I might have written about this in the book. I don't remember, but this totally reminds me that all the dudes at the base we're like, okay, who's going to be, because it would be different. The intruders would get different ones would be picked every week because different people have different ways they think they could be able to break in or break out of the property. And
Absolutely.
if you were a dude and you weren't an intruder, you're like, he better not come to my building. They're gonna get a surprise.
It's almost like a twisted way of get it out of your system.
Oh,
And
it
while you
really-
get it out of your system, we'll make our systems better.
100%. Mike got off on breaking in, and we got off on trying to track him down and beat the crap out of him.
I got manhandled a little bit. We got maced a couple times.
Yep.
What?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it was
for sure.
it was basically like you could do anything, but don't break any parts. Okay. Whatever happens, happens,
yeah.
but they can't be broken when we're done.
We were being held down on the ground. It was myself and Chris. I can't remember who else was there, but I remember this. Danny Dunnigan walked up to us and said, "We're going to drill. Let's drill right." And as we're being held down, he maced us in the face with pepper spray.
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding
It was
me?
painful.
Like you're subdued and you're already
Danny-
subdued and he sprays you in the face.
Danny
That's just
Danny
downright
maced
evil.
so many people, I bet.
Danny done it again.
Danny done it again. Oh my goodness. Amy Scobie, can Mike Brown 101 stay on with us for all things Scientology directly after this live? Would
I already
love to
asked
have
Mike.
him on.
I already asked
How about we
Mike.
do this? Could you guys maybe just have me on if I do something and maybe I can check in for maybe just a short period of time? And
Yeah,
help?
yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. I wouldn't have put you
Yeah,
on the
just send
spot
me a-
like this. That's
Sorry,
Amy paid.
Mike,
Send me-
paid
that's
to do
on
that.
me because I didn't get a
Send
chance
me-
to text
send
Amy
me-
after you and I talked. So I'm
That's
sorry.
totally fine. No, send me the invite and I'll pop in real fast. I just might not be able to stay too long.
That's okay.
Awesome.
I got this
Yeah.
this whole other like thing that I do on the this, as my side hustle during the day. So
Yeah.
I got to get ready for that tomorrow.
It's all
It's all
good,
good.
dude. Regina Smith, question: why do they treat everyone like a prisoner? Why not just let them leave? Because then they'd be on the YouTube machine telling their stories. That's why. This is
As
their
are
work.
we.
All this was so we wouldn't be here today, and it didn't work.
Worked
Yep.
out swimmingly for them.
Ruth W. It's my first anniversary of finding you all and coming out of the lie totally. Thank you all for saving me. Wow, thank
That's
you,
amazing.
Ruth.
Yay,
Oh,
Ruth.
Ruth, that's great.
That's amazing.
amazing.
That makes this all worthwhile. That gives me a little steamy inside, little steamy eyed or whatever you want to call it.
Curious,
Misty,
it's called.
Tisty,
Not steamy.
gets me all steamy.
Not what he was
love-
going for, but
Love Sherlock says,
Yeah,
can't
wrong
find
word.
a key. Yeah, I'm telling you, Keystone cops, Scientology ain't got nothing on the Keystoners. Yeah, no, it was for a long time. It was a shit show, proper shit show. Stephen Britton question: does Route 66 go anywhere near the Ent base? It actually kind of does. I think that's 60 is basically the 66 as well. But yeah, if you take that, the Gilman Hot Springs, if you take Highway 79, it goes all the way up, and I think it collides with the 60 freeway up in San Bernardino. Ruth Sky.
Rune.
Rune
Skite
skiing. Are Mike Brown also? Mike Brown
Is
also
Mike Brown
an
also
ex-SEAL
an
member?
ex-SEAL
Yes.
member? Yes.
Mike Brown was in the SEAL
I am, yes.
organization with us at the international base. Autumn the Cat.
Which, by the way, on that topic, bookmark and don't forget to subscribe to both Blown for Good and Mike Brown 101. We will be doing an escape story with Mike to cover how you escaped, Mike.
Yeah,
right?
because this isn't even how Mike escaped.
Yes.
This
No,
was
this
a
is just
planned
how-
escape.
This was just
let's just say that
play.
it was preordained that at some point I would escape.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. Well said.
A name, super sticker. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought when you bailed. I was like, yeah, you let people practice being an escapee or an intruder, they're going to figure out real easily how to escape. Up Mayo. Fantastic work, Mike. Your future success was assured. Yes.
Yes. Bravo.
Bondi music. Would you guys get notified if someone escaped or did you guys get sanctioned if someone blew? Did you
Yes
guys
to
get
both.
sanctioned?
Yes, to
Yes.
both. Yes,
we would
in that there was a
incorporate it
daily
into that drill. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a daily report that was circulated to all executives at the base, which
Well, the
included
higher
the higher up
executives.
executives, like the top, maybe
The
the top
commanding
30.
officers of the various organizations and the boss people and a lot of RTC people.
Yes, so that daily report would go to David and Shelley Miscavige and other relevant executives, and it would include anyone who had escaped. Second to that, yes, anyone who had any dealings with said escapee would be sanctioned. Yes.
Yeah. And also, if you were thinking of GTFO in anytime soon, then you'd get under more scrutiny, because they were like, also one of the things that was loose is that people that were thorny weren't being dealt with, and then they were the ones that would escape. So people like me got put on security watch or restricted to the property a lot more and a lot more frequently, because it was like, if you were in any kind of trouble with David Miscavige whatsoever, or Dave thought you might want to escape, you would just be restricted to the property, and you'd have to sleep under your desk or find a
Yeah, there was a dedicated
hallway.
council called perimeter, meaning secure the perimeter. So anyone who's wanting to exit the perimeter would be on that list, for example.
That's right. So that was the list you'd be on, would be the perimeter list.
Mark was on the bad boy list a lot of the time. I was on the good boy list, so I would be used as the one of the people that would go out on recovery teams to airports and bus stations and trying to figure out where they went to try to get them back. And I probably a dozen times I had gone out on what they refer to as a blow drill, trying to get the person back within the first 24 hours.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
we should do
I was on the bad boy side of that.
We should make a list of all the ones that you did and who it was, and say how we if you didn't get them back, because usually you're just staked out somebody's
I never found anybody,
house.
but I was
yeah. But then you find out
literally states away, sometimes everywhere. It was horrible.
Yeah. Just a reminder, we're 4 minutes until
awesome.
all things Scientology.
We got 3 questions left. Do they still go
Perfect.
after the DeWolf family, or are they off limits considering their blood ties to Hubbard? I'm not sure about that. I think the only one left is Jamie DeWolf. And he does whatever he wants. I don't think they have any, they've not been able to do anything to him. They might fair gay him, but I don't know I don't know. You'd have to ask Jamie. Thank you, Proto Man. Office of Spoofed Affairs super sticker. Thank you for that, Office of Spoofed Affairs. Can you do a future video with Amy, Mike, Jackson, etc. on what Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's like at the Ant Base? Do you have any stories? Oh, we could do a million stories on that. Yes, we will do that. Thank you, Code Monkey. Great idea. Teloperion, better than a prison break. I would think so, because he broke in and then broke back out. And no, wait,
double whammy.
Broke out, then broke in, then broke out again. So it's
triple whammy.
4 breakouts and 2 break-ins, because it was 2 of them. So that's like a six banger all in one there. Boof.
And you know what I did at the end of the night? So I made this huge mess and people were up all night. I went home. I picked up Mark's Jr., which was my ex-wife at the time, Samantha.
Yeah.
And I went home that night. So I went back to the base, picked up Sam, and left. And everyone was up all night. And I was like, I don't fucking care.
Nice. And hey, Mike is now at 4.99 subscribers.
Oh,
so to all the 1,800
Mike
people
Brown
watching,
101.
get on over there and subscribe. It's easy.
I would appreciate it.
There's
This is
no
exciting.
cost. OSA can't track you. It's free and clear of any encumbrances.
Yeah. Autumn the Cat, you got the last chat. Question, do other locations do similar drills, flag or regular orgs, ranch? You want to answer that, babe? While I get the end
they
stuff ready?
definitely do. All the other organizations do the exact same drills, and they're often premised and driven by the instructions from the headquarters as to what to do. Yes.
Yeah.
And when we were at the ranch, we would do the same thing. And we had even a special drill there, which was called school time. When we were out doing non-school activities, if you saw somebody that looked like the media or a county inspector or something, what you would say is, as a kid, you just start saying school time, and then all the kids would hear that and they knew that somebody was there, and we would go up and sit in the course room.
Oh,
so
my
you wouldn't
God.
be hauling rocks by hand and digging ditches and
school time.
So
but the reason
I'm-
why they did that was to hide, because it's a normal thing for kids to say, and everyone would just drop their stuff and go and sit in the course room and grab a book and pretend you're studying.
Why does that feel like something from a horror movie? But by the way, Mike, congratulations on hitting 5K. I just checked, and
Nice.
I'm gonna duck out and go run over to Amy. Thank you.
Thanks, babe.
All right.
Thanks for doing this, Mike. This was a good one. We should totally do the blow drills. There's so many. That's the crazy. That is the crazy thing about that place.
Years of content here, Mark.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you. Even when you come on, we think of a bunch of things we didn't think of. So
yeah, let's do it.
awesome,
Somebody's
guys.
manufacturing someday.
Yeah, exactly. We can do, dude, we got hundreds of videos we could do on this subject. Thanks for joining us, guys. If you stick around, you'll go right to the next video. See ya.